Hi, this is Dan here. I hope you're well. Arpeggios or chord tones, we use them all the time as bass players. And in this lesson, I'm going to show you 6 of the most important ones, how you can use them, what they are, the different positions. Let's get into it. We'll start off with the major 7th arpeggio. Now, this is a chord diagram. You see the red blob is the root note. That's the starting note, the lowest note of this arpeggio. So you can move this anywhere onto the E or the A string. It's a movable shape. So I'm choosing to do it on E, 7th fret, A string. Now, it's very important to understand the make-up of the note. So we have a root, that's that red blob. That's a major 3rd, perfect 5th, or you could just say 5th, major 7th, octave. It's a good workout, just going up and down. I'm using fingers 2, 1, 4, and then 3, 4. Very, very good to separate those fingers and build coordination, strength, stamina, as well as being able to use it in songs. Let's go off the same route and play a minor 7th. So this time let's go first finger. You've got a root, a flat 3rd this time. That's the difference between it and a major 7th. Plus that note, flat 7 rather than a major 7. Then we have a dominant 7th, which looks exactly the same as a major 7th, except it has a flat 7 instead of that major 7th. Going fingers 2, 1, 4, 2, 4. Now these are just 1 octave shapes, and you need to know them in different octaves, which I'll get to in a minute, but let's move on to a minor 7 flat 5, which is also called a half diminished. That goes like this. Compare that to a minor 7. It's exactly the same, apart from it has a flat 5. So it looks like a confusing name, minor 7 flat 5. But if you know a minor 7th and you're really tuned in to which intervals are which, you just go to a 5 and you flatten it, which means going down 1 fret. It doesn't make sense. Then we've got a diminished 7. Looks exactly the same as the half diminished, except we have that interval there, which is a double flat 7. That's a flat 7. So we have to double flat it to get to that note. And the final useful one is an augmented, and this is built from a root, a major 3rd, and then an augmented 5th, And you find that you have a major 3rd each and every time. Which brings me on to the next point, which is how do we expand these shapes out of just 1 octave? You can actually do a lot just with those 1 octave shapes. But let me just show you, I'll demonstrate this with a major 7th. And let's go back to the 7th fret, that's E. Now this is how I do it anyway. This is how I've found that this has really helped me. And that's learning the bass in terms of patterns, geometry. I find it really useful. So if we go to the octave, we've got the octave, major 7th, 5th and 3rd, and stop there. Just that little shape there, which spans, sounds a bit Stranger Things, doesn't it? It's the D and the G strings, just 2 strings there, and if you just remember that pattern in terms of what fingers are being used, that is an E. So if we just jump to the E that's on the 7th fret of the A string and do that same pattern, we have the same notes, the same intervals. And that's how I'm doing it. If I go from the very end here, I've got 4, 3, 4, 1, 2. This is finger numbers. And you could just go 2, 1, and then you need the shift there. Little finger to first finger. Or you make the shift early and go with your little finger. Do exactly the same pattern here and there. That's one way you can do this. On a 4-string bass, it works very well. If you're on the E string, there, I have a different pattern here. So I've got my root, my major 3rd and my 5th. really should know that the major seventh is really the next fret down from the E. And then it's the same principle as before. You've got two strings here, and you just do that same thing up the octave. And you know, of course that works because we know that an octave on the bass is where you find any notes and you go 2 frets higher and 2 strings higher. Okay, so you can shift a pattern around with ease. Now that principle will work with any of the shapes, so you just have to get them. One more piece of advice is that you probably should also know any arpeggio, not just starting with your first finger, but starting from other fingers. So E minor 7. That's starting with the first finger. If I shift to the second finger, and if I shift to the little finger, I now have a shape going in this direction, a shape going in this direction, and a shape going in this direction. I've spanned quite a lot of the fretboard already. And you just shift an E to the E string, and you've got the same pattern again, just moving it to different registers. So you can explore that idea with every single one of these arpeggios. Let's talk about how to practice this. Okay, so one way is to remember that all 6 are the major 7, the minor 7, the dominant 7, minor 7 flat 5, diminished and augmented. And just go to any root. Let's choose B flat and just go through them. So B flat major 7, B flat minor 7, B flat dominant 7, B flat minor 7 flat 5, B flat diminished 7, and finally B flat augmented. This is a good way of doing it because you're forced to think about the differences and also the similarities between the arpeggios, and I find that that makes it really easy to learn them, and then you can move them to different roots. Another thing you can do is play through a harmonized major scale. Let's do D major. This will give you major 7ths, minor 7ths, a dominant 7th, and a minor 7 flat 5. Okay, and one good thing with that is in the next section I'm going to show you what you can do, actually making music from this, and with that harmonized scale you can do a lot. Let's move on to that section now actually. So a few things you can do to practice this. Well, dominant 7th arpeggios feature a lot in blues music, so if we stick to the key of B flat, you've got B flat dominant 7th, and move exactly the same shape down to the 6th fret of the A string, that's E flat 7. You can say E flat 7 or E flat dominant 7th, means the same thing. 2 frets higher is F7. You know, that sounds like music. Even though I'm playing it a bit more like an etude or a study, you can hear the beginnings of music going on there. Another thing you can do is take a jazz standard. So here, I've got a PDF of Blue Bossa, and if I start from the A section, I'm just going to follow the chord symbols, and again, it's not really going to sound too much like music because I'm just going to play the arpeggios up and down. We need a bit of rhythm and phrasing to make it sound really musical. We'll do that in a second. I'll just go up and down this. That's just the A section, and as you could see just at the end there I was extending the arpeggio a little bit. For now you could take any jazz standard or any chord progression you find and just go up and down the 1 octave shape. Then when you get more confident you can move to different registers. Now I mentioned before how that doesn't really sound like music, but if I now do less is more, remember, and in this case it's a sort of bossa rhythm, so if I stick a bit more rhythm into it now, See, it sounds more musical now when I actually make music with those notes. So I use rhythms. I did some sort of a chromatic thing somewhere. You know, when you lead up chromatically to a chord, that sounds good. Earlier on I showed you a harmonized D major scale. Now D major is related to B minor. They have the same chords in them. So I'm going to select a few of those arpeggios and play around with that. This time I do want to make it a bit more musical. So I'm going to go B minor 7, E minor 7 and F sharp minor 7. These are all minor 7 chords. It's the same shape. That's why it works nicely. I'm going to play through those. Okay, let's make it more musical now. Okay, that sounds more musical. You do not have to use all of the chord tones. Let's simplify it more. Just roots. Roots and flat thirds. So you can start to experiment, simplify things, make it more difficult. Just, you know, just use your imagination, use the shapes, let your ear guide where you go with this, and soon enough you'll hear real music happening. I'll leave you with one more thing you can do, which is just to absolutely wing it and just make something up, just not even adhering to any kind of harmony. D minor 7. And just arbitrarily, let's move up 3 frets. That's up a minor third. Go back and forth between that. Okay, that sounds really good. You can get a drum loop, you can record something. That sounds like the beginnings of a song. So do learn this, you know, the shapes as they are, as I've presented them to you. And as soon as you can, I think anyway, try to make music from it. Try to link what you're playing to sounds that you hear in music. That's going to help your ear. I hope that lesson helped you. If you did like that lesson, then you're going to like this one too. Any questions, let me know. See you on the next video.